A victory cut short, JJ close behind. Hi everyone. Things are heating up in the NASCAR world, and CBSSports.com is your one-stop shop. I'm Lauren Shehadi, and this is your NASCAR report. We've talked about in weeks past how it's going to be difficult for any driver to outshine Jimmie Johnson, but Carl Edwards is giving it his best shot. Although his best might not be good enough. Even after the victory, Carl Edwards looked upset when he was told that Jimmie Johnson, who is far and away the leader, had finished second in Sunday's Pep Boy Auto 500 at Atlanta. He then replied, "Man, Jimmy's magic." He is pretty good, that's for sure, and the standings are proof. Edwards, who jumped ahead of Greg Biffle and Jeff Burton, was only able to get 15 points closer to Johnson, trailing by 183 with 3 races left in the chase. His mission is clear: win the next 3 and hope for the best. Not much more you can do than that. Good strategy, win out. The man with all the strategy joins us now, our NASCAR expert, Pete Pistone. Pete, Carl Edwards did what he had to do on Sunday in Atlanta. He won, but with Jimmie Johnson's run, it didn't really cut into the points lead at all. He has to be frustrated. Does he still believe he has a chance at the title? Do you still believe he does?
Well, Carl does. You know, he's saying all the right things, Lauren, but, I mean, you have to look at this from a reality factor. You know, all Jimmie needs to do is finish 9th or better in the next 3 races, and Carl can go out and win the next 3 and end the chase with 4 in a row, and Jimmie Johnson's going to be standing there with a 3rd straight championship. It does have to be frustrating, though, when you're Carl Edwards and Roush Racing, to know that you go out there like you did on Sunday, you win the race, you do what you need to do, and no matter what happens, and adversity threw at that 48 car all day long, they came back and they finished second to increase their point lead.
That's true, Pete. For Carl, his victory cut short because, in a sense, the victory didn't really mean as much as he hoped for it to mean. Well, the call by crew chief Chad Knaus for 4 new tires on the last stop of the day was credited with giving Johnson the runner-up finish. How important is the chemistry, Pete, between Johnson and Knaus in this quest for a 3rd straight championship?
Well, it's absolutely really the most important thing, to have the chemistry between a crew chief and driver. And, you know, I'll put Jimmie Johnson and Chad Knaus right up there with, I think, the best driver-crew chief combos in the history of NASCAR. You know, you think back when Jeff Gordon and Ray Evernham were winning all those championships in the 90s. These guys are just always on the same page. Jimmie does such a great job telling Chad what the car needs, and Chad does great things like he did on Sunday when he made that call for 4 tires at the end, and that certainly proved to be could have been the winning move. 5 more laps, I think Jimmie Johnson would have passed Carl Edwards and won that race.
Pete, that's quite a statement. One of the best?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, you know, crew chiefs are like head coaches in pro football or baseball managers, Lauren, and they make the calls, give their driver all the tools that they can for that driver to hammer it home, and we're going to have Jimmie Johnson hammer home 3 championships in a row here this year. Well,
Pete, it's working. Johnson is no doubt on his way to a 3rd straight title. We're starting to see some movement now for 2009 already. Let's talk about movement, Pete. Which drivers may have new addresses before this season ends?
Well, we're going to have a little sneak preview of 2009 when we get down to Homestead in a couple of weeks. You know, Mark Martin's going to move over to Hendrick Motorsports next year to run the 5-car full-time. He's going to actually get in that car for the Homestead finale. And Casey Mears, who's in that car now and is going to move over to Richard Childress Racing next year, he's actually going to run a Richard Childress Racing number 33 entry at Homestead. We've seen this before as teams try to get a jump start on 2009. It's so important, as we've seen this year, to be ahead of the curve. And I think Childress and Hendrick are trying to do that with the swap of Martin and Mears at Homestead.
Well, Pete, it's not 2009 yet. Texas Motor Speedway on the radar, and it's another 1.5-mile track. Is Carl Edwards the favorite this week? Talk to me about upsets.
Well, you know, Carl Edwards is definitely the favorite, Lauren. He won when we were there in April, and he loves 1.5-mile racetracks. He just came off the win at Atlanta, which is a sister track to Texas. It's 1.5 miles. I think Jimmie Johnson will be there as well. But, you know, you talk about upsets. The Roush Fenway team has really been very good here. And how about a couple of guys we haven't talked about all year, I think have a good chance to win this week? That's Jamie McMurray from Roush Fenway and David Reagan, the 2nd-year driver who came home 8th this past week in Atlanta. I think if Cousin Carl doesn't get it done for Roush Fenway, we might see an upset and maybe David Reagan or Jamie McMurray standing in victory lane, and we'll see if Jimmie Johnson can get that top 10 that he needs and take one more step closer to that 3rd championship.
Jimmie Johnson is well on his way. Pete Pistone, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Talk to you next week, Lauren.
All right, and thank you for watching. Keep it locked right here on CBSSports.com for all your NASCAR info. I'm Lauren Shehadi.